founder community, actor community, sports communities where you've got many people competing over limited resources. Oh, well, I should be successful, this person's successful, why am I successful? Same in stand-up,
Roei Samuel. 6 years ago, he sold RealSport, a sports content creation platform with over 9 million unique monthly active users. Today, Roei dedicates his life to helping startup founders connect with investors and advisors through his fast-growing platform called Connected.
I know that whatever I'm doing now and any success that I've had today is a vehicle to my long-term goal of helping as many people as possible.
In this episode, we discuss his transition post-exit and why working with founders makes him feel alive and gives him purpose.
Roei, thank you so much for coming to the show. I'm very, very happy to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me, Anastasia. I appreciate it.
So you sold your company RealSport 6 years ago.
Yeah.
That's long enough for you to have made enough mistakes for us to dig into and learn from. So I hope you'll be an open book with me today and share those lessons. But please tell me about the company a little bit, why you started it, what did it do, and why you sold it.
Yeah, of course, and certainly made enough mistakes in the last 6 years to talk about. So I started a business called StudentSale when I was at university. This is like 2010. And I was running club nights, I was running events, I was running student trips, the usual stuff that students do to try and make money. I just realized if I could build out some online content around this, I would be able to distribute those events and those tours in a better way than it was. And I started building tools for students to create online content. And we rolled out like 8 or 9 universities. It was really, really fun, but students don't like to spend money. And advertisers don't like students because they don't like to spend money. So I started looking at other environments to apply those tools. So I started to look at the world of sports and gaming. Big sports fan, gaming fan. So we essentially built out content creation tools for sports and gaming fans, helping them create podcasts, videos, other types of content, giving them tools to optimize that content for social, which is really standard now, but quite bleeding edge back in 2013 to get to market. Yeah. And we got really fortunate with that. Sports just having a big renaissance on Twitter. Just after Twitch had launched, massive gaming platform acquired by Amazon. So lots of people using our tools to create content for those platforms. We ended up working with some of the biggest sports rights holders in the world, the Premier League, the NBA, the NFL. Really exciting journey. Scaled to about 8 million monthly users. We were acquired by a gaming company called Gfinity in 2018. And really exciting journey.
Okay, so let's go back to that moment when you just sold. How did it feel?
Well, I was 26 years old, and overnight I went from having payday loans to being a self-made millionaire at 26 who had never had money. For context, my mum was a primary school teacher. My dad spent most of his 20s as a bus driver. I didn't come from a family that understood financial literacy or well-being or health in any means. And I literally had payday loans at the time we were selling the company because I didn't know to pay myself properly. I didn't really, I'm 25, 26 with no idea. So it was amazing, terrifying, and the start of a really interesting personal growth and learning journey. But on the night when we sold the company, we threw a bit of a party with my co-founders. Yeah, of course. And we had actually a really lovely hotel not too far from here. And we were out on the balcony and there's a few of us. And one of my friends said to me, "This is the most depressed I've ever seen you." So, which was interesting. And, I think there's many reasons. Well, you know what it takes to build a business. And when you're in your early 20s, that's when you're still forming friendships and relationships and all of those things. And probably because of not having any men growing up or anything and thinking that getting exit, getting liquidity was the only thing I wanted in life, you sacrifice relationships. It was then the success of my business was the end of a 7-year relationship. You lose lots of friends along that way because you stop investing in friendships because all of your time gets invested into business.
Yeah, of course. So when you sold the business, did you stay in touch with the people you worked with? Because I assume they were your relationships, right? Because you sacrificed everything else pretty much.
Yeah, do you know what? There's some of them who are still amazing friends. We also had some difficult situations. We had one of the most actually upsetting situations was one of my best friends at the time, who's also the CFO of that company. He was with us, he was an American guy, and we brought him over, and he was with us on a visa. But as you may know, when you sell a company, it's change of control. Actually, you lose the rights to your people with visas or working with visas. So he had to leave the country, like he was just this, 2-year relationship. So there are all these like really weird situations which are just going on around us. But absolutely, and some of the proudest moments are people that I know who joined me at 19, 20 years old, who stayed with the company who acquired us, who's a PLC, heading departments. And it's amazing to see that, people who are joining you out of uni or maybe a few years out of university who totally changed their lives and alongside us. So yeah, there's been lots of really positive things. My brother worked for that company. I hired my brother into that company. So, lots of really nice stories like that.
But was it ever so bad that you regretted selling the business?
There was a period of time after we completed our lock-in, and I didn't know what I was going to do next. And in that 6-7 month period, that identity crisis, ego crisis, however you want to see it, that was really, really difficult. And I felt that I took many steps backwards personally and psychologically during that period, and that was very difficult. As soon as I started the next business, and that was, nearly 2 years after we sold the last one, I was so grateful for all the learnings and all of those learnings, all of those lessons I could then consolidate and integrate and take forward into the next business. And then it was like amazing. That was the best thing ever, zero regrets, because I'm able to now use those things as a springboard into the next one. But in that transition period, there of course are moments of regret.
So let's talk about those lessons. Which one do you think is the most impactful looking back for you today?
I think a lot of them were lessons in leadership. A lot of them were lessons in leadership. I don't think I was a great leader in the first business because maybe I didn't have confidence. I certainly didn't have experience, that's for sure. I didn't have confidence. I don't think I understood what people needed in a founder and a CEO. And a lot of that actually came through the exit because the CEO of the company, Gfinity, who acquired us, was a guy called Gary Cook. And Gary was the CEO of Manchester City during their acquisition. He was on the board of Nike. And such a leader. And actually learning from him for a year was incredible.
Oh, wow.
And so some of those lessons that came from the exit, it was those types of things where it's like, okay, that's a real game changer. Especially a guy like Gary, because Gfinity was maybe 400 people. It wasn't the size of a Nike or a Man City. So getting to work with him on a day-to-day basis, that was an incredible lesson to learn. So I think many of those lessons was to do with leadership. But I think that the founder journey, I'm sure, you've experienced this as well. It's especially probably the first time. It's as much like learning about your own psyche as it is about everything else.
Definitely. Okay, so lessons of leadership. What else?
As in lessons from that exit or lessons from that business?
Any lessons because you mentioned before that today when you're running your new company, and we're going to talk more about that one. You're using lots of those lessons you learned during the 2 years in between the businesses. So I'd love to dig deep in those 2 years and what happened to you and what you learned and what it is we can learn from you.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is looking after yourself. I did not look after myself in the slightest during that first business.
I'm not surprised.
Right. And, early 20s, so you're trying to balance all the things that we do in our early 20s and burning the candle in both ends and in the middle and on every side. So I think that was a really important one, looking after yourself. And I actually think part of that transition from founder to CEO, which I would say we've done now, with Connected at the stage and size of the business, a lot of that is looking after yourself and showing to your team that you can make the transition and showing to the team that you do need to evolve with the business as the business grows. And the things that the business need from you day one are not the things the business need from you after year 4, for example. I think your role changes significantly, and actually leading by example in having a bit more balance, in learning how to show up in the right circumstances in the right way is really important as a CEO. Whereas actually as a founder, maybe it's more of the slog. You know, and I think those things change quite drastically as well. I would say another key lesson is really with the way that you have to focus on the most core levers of your business. I think with RealSport, sometimes we had magpie syndrome.
Okay.
You know, you run to the shiny thing. And it's because if you can execute on that opportunity. So, an example of this, it would have been the summer of 2016, and RealSport was around 2 million users a month. So it was getting into a really good spot, we're doing something great there, and we had a massive opportunity with the Premier League, where we were going to host the first ever Premier League. So every single sports team was going to have a FIFA tournament internally, and the winner of that FIFA tournament would represent each Premier League team, and then they would go into an Premier League. And this was an amazing opportunity for us. It was going to be our biggest revenue opportunity by far in terms of a single contract. It was massive for us, and we went incredibly far down the line. We had, I think, 7 or 8 of the Premier League clubs had signed with us to do this, and it was great, and so much learning on that side. And we took our eyes off the ball a little bit with the platform, and the platform suffered a bit, because, you know, we didn't have the resources to execute on everything, as is always the case. And we didn't prioritize in a sensible way. And eventually EA pulled the whole thing, because EA is the game publisher behind the game. They realized they could do it themselves in-house. So they were just like, yeah, we're going to do that. So we lost a lot of time, we lost a lot of cognitive load and cognitive space from growing our bread and butter, growing our most important streams and most important products, to focus on an opportunity that was incredibly speculative and could have moved things forward in a drastic way, but we weren't sensible enough with downside protection at that time, and we divested too much resource from what was working incredibly well. And now when I look at Connected, you know, we had opportunities to expand into different territories much earlier. We had opportunities to launch new products earlier, and we didn't do them, even though they were great opportunities and we had the right partners, because of those.
You learned your lesson.
Exactly.
So during those 2 years between your businesses, did you intentionally go and process the lessons like that from your previous business?
Yes, and mainly through investing in others and trying to work with them.
Okay.
So, for example, the first business I invested in post RealSport was a mental health platform, because of the mental health journey I've been going on as a founder, as I know you're aware as well. It was a mental health technology company called Telera. They were helping employers improve the mental well-being of their employees, and invested quite heavily into that company, far more heavily than they should have, as I think is the way post-exit from those founders, and lost a whole lot, I'm not afraid to tell you. And, you know, just getting involved with them, became a non-exec for them, as I did with a couple of other businesses, and went in as an advisor. And that was really that consolidation process. And again, you know, it was a big lesson in leadership. How do you advise other founders?
Yeah.
I mean, when you know, we're very difficult to coach at times. So I think that was a big part of that consolidation. And then it stepped away for a while. You know, I stepped away, I went to stand up for 6 months, which was a lot of fun.
Stand up comedy. I wanted to ask because I know obviously that you did that.
Exactly.
But I'd love to hear why you did that and what it gave you. I know what it gave your audience, a lot of laughter.
Sometimes. I'll tell you what. Stand-up is something I think every single individual should do, because the lessons you learn are phenomenal, and they're lessons in humility. They're lessons in resilience. They're lessons in optimization and iteration more than anything else, because the feedback loop is brutally immediate. And when it goes badly, you really feel it. I mean, and on the other side, you will never be nervous going to a pitch or a meeting again, because if you can't pitch your business and what you're doing as a founder, trying to make people laugh and failing at that, I mean, that is a good one to deflate the ego post-exit for sure. I would suggest everyone do that, and a lot of good lessons there. But generally, I remember the first big VC pitch that I did post-COVID and interconnected, it was amazing. I had this moment where there was sort of a general partner and 3 associates around this table, and I was pitching, and they were just lapping it up. They were just loving everything, and I had the exact same feeling I used to get if you're killing it in a room on stand-up. And it was so funny. It was like this, you just know what's landing, and just those connections that you make are amazing. So I think if you need to get good at pitching, which any founder does, stand up, I highly recommend.
It makes me think of the conversation we had before about overcoming insecurities. That maybe that's the most brutal but most efficient way to do that.
Do you know what? I didn't think about that, but you're right. You were talking about posting online and doing personal branding. I was like, I think
putting yourself out there. Because in our post-exit community, what I see a lot is people actually hiding from the spotlight. And a lot of people learned the lesson to humility a bit too well. They say it was due to luck that I became so successful, or due to other people, and often without noticing that they end up hiding for a bit too long, a bit too much, and that interferes with their next success. Or even if they're contributing something amazing to the world, but they're too modest.
Yeah.
It's not helpful.
Which is a shame, because I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. And especially now in 2024, where content and personal brand is so much about authenticity, talking about those things is so valuable. And I would say the ability to be vulnerable as part of the brand and saying, well, look, there was a lot of luck along the way, and talking about that, it would resonate with so many people, right? So I think as long as you're speaking from an authentic place, I think you can still be humble and put yourself out there.
Yeah, it's an art form though. Okay, so for you, it was very helpful in the sense to do stand-up comedy.
Yeah, exactly that. And I look at other founders I know who've exited, who mainly from a ego perspective, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I just mean in pure sense, don't like having the lack of identity and jump straight back into founding something like immediately. And it's so tempting to do because none of us like to feel lost. We all like to feel stable identity, of course. And I think that's a really good way of burning out quickly, because you need to give yourself a break. I don't need a break sitting with your feet up doing nothing. If you're the founder type, it's unlikely you're going to be able to do that. But before saying I'm going to commit the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years of my life to a project, I think giving yourself that time to reflect and just get some headspace is so important. So yeah, stand-up was a big part of that.
But what I find fascinating about the story is that many people I talk to are saying, I took very good care of myself. I healed. I went to silent meditation retreats. I did this and the other thing. But you seem to have chosen something that actually sounds very scary and brutal, right? So you're saying I did take good care of myself, and then I put myself out there in a situation that's potentially extremely uncomfortable psychologically. So what was the logic for doing that?
Well, that's interesting, because I think, although you're right, it can be traumatic doing stand-up, absolutely. But it's totally different. I think when you're a founder, you have the pressure of feeding 100 mouths. You have the pressure of investors, and at least with stand-up, if you bomb, everyone else is fine, no one cares. So I still think, the level of pressure is there, but it's totally different. And I think, actually, especially, it's like at the early days of building, it's you, and you're accountable to yourself, and your results are based on you. And if you like building, that's great. By the time you get to exit, you're not building, you're managing, you're moving complex structures, you're going through. So actually going back to just being me, and I can iterate my script, and I don't need to do this by committee and do that. That was amazing. I loved that.
Yeah, lots of people are saying that I would love to do something, but I don't want any responsibility for employees. I had that too. That was the biggest fear, being responsible for other people again. So when you decided to do the stand-up comedy, did you think it would be your new career, your new path for a long time, or you actually did it as an exercise, short-term exercise?
I mean, we talked about this before. I think the prevalence of addictive personality within entrepreneurs is pretty high. I became obsessed with stand-up. I was like, this is me, 100%. I went from being like, I'm going to try to 8 to 10 times a week, sometimes couple times a night, writing 3-4 hours a day. I mean, it became an obsession. Like, you could turn anything into addiction, right? If you're that type of personality. So it absolutely was an obsession. And to be honest, I think it was just found and connected. And it's funny, like, I think I founded Connected probably out of ego, saying that I need to do something again in the commercial world, which maintains my track record, builds my track record, all of those things. But I realized, as soon as I found Connected, I'm all in. So that was like, I think the last day I went on stage was the day before we launched our MVP for Connected, because I knew you couldn't do both at once because the type of all-in personality. So I think, yes, for 6-7 months, I was like, this is me. And I loved it. It's so much fun, but it is brutal. It's quite a toxic environment. It's quite toxic. Yeah. I think in many ways it could be a bit similar to founder communities, actor communities, sports communities, where you've got many people competing over limited resources and maybe feelings of envy, maybe feelings of, oh, well, I should be successful, this person's successful, why am I not successful? Same in stand-up, it's same in acting communities, I'm sure. So it was actually quite a toxic community, to be fair, so I was quite glad to be out of it.
So what did you learn about yourself through that process that you didn't know before?
I thought I cared what people think about much more than I do. What people think of me much more than I do.
Cool.
I was shocked that actually I could go up on stage without, and on many occasions, no one laughing at my jokes. And because you try to stuff. Yeah, I know, it's pretty brutal. It's funny, my first show went so well. And my second, my third, my fourth, and I was like, oh, stand-up's easy. And then my fifth show is one of the most traumatic days of my life, right? It was beyond bogging. I mean, other comedians were making jokes at my expense for laughs. Like that's how bad it was by the end of that show. So, but I didn't care, and I was so surprised. I thought my ego was much more fragile than it is, which was
that's
nice.
Cool. That probably gave you some confidence.
Yeah,
I like that. Okay. Okay. So, what else did you do to take care of yourself?
So during RealSport, I put on a lot of weight. I put on a lot of weight because I stopped taking care of myself in that way. ADHD. ADHD is a amazing tool, but also can be a big crutch. So the way that the ADHD brain regulates task and focus is through dopamine. So we need dopamine in order to focus. And you can get dopamine through exercise, you can get dopamine through high-risk situations, which is why, again, probably such high prevalence of entrepreneurialism. But you can sugary foods, ultra high processed foods, like all of these things which are easy to go to get those dopamine rushes. So I was living a very unhealthy lifestyle. So I did start, I was just training 5-6 times a week, going really hard on that, really enjoyed that side of it. So doing all the usual work-life stuff, which is great. Spent a lot of time trying to repair relationships as well. Spent some good time traveling, and just trying to manage also the difficulties of having disposable income for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
And not, I think when you grow up with being deprived in certain areas, your brain will always create them as a reward center. And when you go from that payday loan to, having that, suddenly you're just going to go a bit crazy. And you're going to buy the things that you always wanted to buy that you certainly do not need. And, there's there were weekends in Vegas, there were weekends in Shanghai, which, as a 26-year-old, seemed like these are the things that make me happy.
Yeah.
But they don't. And they're very, very empty. And ultimately, some of the lowest points are when you're there being like, oh, I've spent 25, 26 years imagining that this will be my happiness, to then be like, oh, there is no happiness. There's no happiness there for me anyway, with that type of thing. And it was just a lot of relearning. Like, what are your values? What are the things that might make you happy? What is your value system? What are the things that actually make this worth it? And I think that's a big part of the learning as well.
Okay, so let's slow down here because I think it's very important. So what helped you understand what actually makes you happy? Once you realize what you used to think was wrong.
I think a lot of trial and error, and certainly a lot of error, absolutely.
It's very found a way of learning, as we discussed before.
And expensive one as well, an expensive way of learning. I think it was probably only 18 months ago that actually I learned what makes me happy, or at least what allows me to justify the amount of time I'll spend in pursuit of something, and that is genuinely trying to have positive impact on some other people's lives. Because, and we spoke about this at length before, right? We live in a world where maybe it's really difficult to make big impact nationally or globally, and there's so many vested interests and so many different things that actually the most effective way of improving people's lives, the people that you touch, the people in your closest environment, and that can be your employees, your customers, your team, the people around you in that way. And I think it was almost going back to basics and practicing that gratitude. Where can we just be good to each other? How can we have a positive impact on this person who we're going to interact with in this day? Because I think I don't think there is happiness in the grandiose. I think you need to find the happiness in simplicity.
Yeah, it also sounds like you became happier and became less selfish.
Yes. Yeah, 100%, 100%.
It's not easy, but I also think that when we exit businesses, it gives us a chance to have a shortcut to that place where we realize that this is what makes us happy. Because otherwise, it's very easy to continue being very self-focused and egoistic.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's probably one of the biggest blessings of getting an early exit is probably most people will spend a really long part of their lives pursuing those commercial and financial aims, being like that would be the happiness part. And if you can bring that forward and have that realization early, and then almost, to not sound too pretentious, but transcends to that realization that it's about other, not self, is definitely one of the biggest benefits.
I like that you corrected yourself, that you don't want to be too pretentious, because it's actually very sad that our society thinks that talking about being unselfish is pretentious, but pursuing materialistic goals is not.
That's so true. Yeah.
I notice when you use words like spirituality, unselfishness, selflessness, people feel uncomfortable. We don't use these words normally, and it's actually sad.
Absolutely. And can I ask, did you, I don't know if you're happy to talk about this stuff, but did you go through a spiritual element to that journey?
Yeah, definitely. And at some point I did realize that probably if not for the exits, it would have taken me a very, very long time. And even at first, I was quite upset that I spent a lot of money learning these lessons, like many other people in our community. I now think that it was still the cheapest way to get to a happy place, because it was the fastest. And time is our most important currency.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's worth it at the end.
Yeah, that's so true. You're right. Many people will realize it at a point where they might feel it was too late to realize.
Yeah, I guess, at some point we just die, and then we have less time of that more fulfilling, more contributing life.
Absolutely. And I'll say one of the things which has been part of my journey on the side has been plant medicine in certain way. And to be honest, that's one of the things which in the future I would love to be able to contribute to in terms of broader understanding, awareness, because I think it is such an important part of that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we compare the motivations? If we can just look at what motivated you to start RealSport, what motivated you to go to stand-up comedy? We talked about it, but I want you now to compare the three. And what motivated you to start Connected and still motivates you every day?
Like everything came together in that moment to tell me that that's what I should be doing. Just because it was clear that, so the companies that I was investing in, there was that obvious outcome for them when they were following these behaviors. And there was almost something which many people were being excluded from, understanding these behaviors, strong investor reporting, how you manage relationships with investors.
So Roy, our audience doesn't know what Connected is, so
Okay.
we need you to to explain it. But can we explain it through how you said everything came together to create that company? So tell me what the company is, and then what it is that came together.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can probably explain this simultaneously. So when I started investing in startups, I could see a very strong positive correlation between specific behaviors these startups were making and the outcomes they were having in terms of the performance, in terms of the growth, in terms of their ability to attract funding. And those behaviors were fundamentally twofold. One was the quality and frequency of their investor reporting, and by extension, the strength of their investor relations. And the second was their ability to access expert networks. Neither of these things are rocket science by any means, but it was amazing to see how many founders, how many businesses didn't have that knowledge, didn't have that education. And they're going for secret sauce and doing all these amazing clever things, which you have to do as a startup, but missing out on these fundamentals, which seem to predicate success, at least from what I could see and other investors I was speaking to. So we just became really passionate about helping as many founders, investors, and experts as possible to take part in these behaviors in a really frictionless way. So it just came together in that way that we could just see this really clear trend. You know, we're building MVPs and iterating, and it was just like, yeah, this works. And it was just moving really quickly. So we found ourselves, you know, after 3 years with sort of 6 million ARR, paying customers in 15, 16 countries. And that was a different type of validation to what we had with RealSport. Because with RealSport, we were just brilliant at marketing because we just understood social. We just understood how to distribute what we were doing through social and then help other people distribute it through social. But this just felt more like a validation of the solution in a way that was not marketing led.
Yeah.
And just
It was more of a product market fit.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Rather than pushing people through marketing.
Yeah.
Okay. And you enjoyed that feeling.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So what are your plans with this company going forward on the personal level?
On a personal level, I feel so grateful to the team. I just think, you know, it's like you've been on this journey and exited 4 times. So grateful to that team for giving some of the best years of their lives to come and build the vision with you and contribute to that vision and take it to the next level. And my team are young, you know, average age of 28, 29, being able to get them an amazing outcome which can put them on the best trajectory. Like that's the stuff that really, really excites me. And I would love to just get as many people this knowledge as possible. Get as many people the tools for success at the early stage as we can. Ultimately, we're not trying to do anything prohibitive for startups. We're not taking equity in startups. We're not taking commissions on fundraisers or anything like that. We just want to plug in best practice so that people can grow and have the best opportunity to facilitate that growth as possible. So I think that's the thing that personally really excites me. And then, yeah, it's a business that we'll build to take to exit in the next period of time. And when the time's right, we'll do that.
And this business gives you more happiness and fulfillment than the previous 2, because I include your stand-up comedy into a business of 1.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, you're right. It was a business of mine. We actually started some podcast networks around that. It's funny, like so much of my businesses seem to involve podcasts in some way or another. I don't know why. So glad to be here. Sports is have you ever worked or been involved in the sports world? Sports market?
No.
It's a really, really fun market. It's a real passion economy stuff. You know, the level of passion that people have in sports is not the same level of passion that people have in fintech. You know, it feels very, very different, right? As
I
you
can
can
see
imagine,
that.
right? And the perks of it, you know, we went to the NBA championships and the Super Bowl and all that. So that was really, really fun. It was very different. Connected is much more fulfilling in terms of it's doing more good. You know, one of the startups who uses Connected, who worked with recently, or sorry, I spoke to recently, called Limitless Travel, and they're doing awesome work. The founder there was working in the city. He was diagnosed with MS when he was sort of 25 years old. Realized his life was not going to look how he thought it was going to look. Left the city, left the job, and then spent a year traveling. When he was traveling, he realized that when the effects of the multiple sclerosis had kicked in, he wouldn't be able to do those things. And he came back and built a business called Limitless Travel, which is helping differently abled people have amazing travel opportunities around the world. And some of their testimonials, you know, I read a testimonial from one of their customers recently who says she can go hang gliding in Tenerife with more dignity than she can go shopping at her local, you know, Asda, like amazing things like that. And with Connected, he built out some amazing stuff, connected to some people who have helped him launch incredible TV campaigns, now helping so many more people. So I don't think for a second Connected is doing anything like that. But if we can help businesses like that facilitate their journey and grow, then we can indirectly do lots of good. So definitely that feels really, really great.
So many of our common friends who are exited founders are reluctant to start a new business because they're very scared of that burnout and that sacrifice that you also experienced and mentioned before. How do you manage to balance your life now, having learned what you've learned from the first experience?
Well, it's a really good question, and I made some of the same mistakes again. So RealSport was the end of a 7-year relationship. Connected with the end of a 4-year relationship. So there you go. Maybe I'm failing faster. Maybe that's a good thing. Because you, regardless of how many lessons you learn, and I think all founders know this, is years 1 and 2 are going to be all-consuming. You know, there's no way of getting around that. I think that's just the reality of it. So if I had kids or I was at a different stage, I mean, I was, how old was I? I guess I was 29, 28 when I found Connected. So I was still young enough, right? I was like, I'm not going to sacrifice too much, but I can certainly see that starting a company again at 40x, whatever it is, it would be difficult. I think the difference this time is with RealSport, I sacrificed everything I could from day one till the exit. With Connected, I sacrificed everything I had to until the minute I didn't. And then I started to pull back. So for year 1 and year 2, again, all consuming, lost the relationship, all the usual same mistakes. But then actually, as we got to year 3, it was like, okay, the company's going to be better served by me looking after myself and getting in shape and having more energy and doing all those things. I made that switch. I was always, never really brought in an EA before doing RealSport again, because I was just like, I would sleep in the office. I don't care. I was doing all those things which, you know, maybe you just feel like you should, because that's the picture of the founder. And then you learn after you've had some success, well, you didn't need to do those things. So I think it's having a bit more respect for myself, a bit more respect for my health, for my time, and then realizing that you lead by example in that way. And you risk your team burning out. And I think we had that in RealSport. I think we really had that in RealSport, because me and my co-founder, Scott, we were pushing ourselves to burn out. And then your team feel like they have to push themselves to burn out. And it's a bit of a vicious cycle. So I think it's having more respect for the time, building a better infrastructure, having an EA, delegating faster. I was never a micromanager at RealSport, but I still wanted oversight into things I didn't need oversight into, because I felt if I didn't, I would lose something, it wouldn't be done as good. So it's all those things.
So less control, you would say?
Definitely.
How did you help yourself release control? That's hard for entrepreneurial types, isn't it?
I actually think that's where angel investing was such a great lesson.
Okay.
Because you're investing, and the first investment I made was the biggest angel investment I made, and that went to zero, within 12 months. And that experience of being like, well, it's out of my hands, and I have to trust another founder to do those things. I think that was such a useful way of saying, okay, sometimes you just got to let control them. You trusted this person, and now you have to continue to empower them. Yes, you can give them advice and do what you can, but you can't micromanage. It's not your business, you know?
But did you find angel investing as exciting as having your own business?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. It was really fun. I met some amazing people. Claudia, my COO, got connected. She was a founder I invested in. That business didn't work, but I made her COO connected. She's been awesome. So there's some really fulfilling parts about it. But yeah, I wonder if so Ben White, who we mentioned before, who's on my podcast, he talks about the adrenaline thresholds that are pushed when you're a founder. I think it's very difficult to replicate those. And I think that's why also post-exit, like, people do the crazy stuff. Like I did the Vegas, the Shanghai, all these crazy situations you get yourself into because your adrenaline threshold is so high now. Like your risk threshold is so high. So yeah, I don't think anything compels. I don't think anything. I'm guessing that's why you did that's why you're 5 times founder, right?
The whole adrenaline thing, again, it's something you and I discussed before. It's also a form of addiction, don't you think? We do become addicted to that level of dopamine and adrenaline. And it's very hard to not have it. Yet I found that during that period after an exit, it's extremely important to release that and be comfortable with more serotonin levels and less adrenaline levels, to just appreciate that we have enough, we are okay, before going to that next business. Would you say you relate to that, or you continue this kind of dopamine driven journey through the whole period between your businesses?
I mean, if I was creating a CV right now, the first thing you would say is dopamine hunter. I mean, that is certainly, I did not learn that lesson, which I had. And I think I still continue with that. I think that ADHD is such a compounding effect on it because of the way that the ADHD brain desires dopamine for focus.
Yeah.
And I think it's why. So John Abel, who is the technical director of the CTO's office at Google, I was with him at an event recently. It was a neurodiversity event run by Google. And he's on the board of the British Dyslexic Association. And he talks a lot about neurodiversity. And he gave the most incredible stat, which is there's the prevalence of neurodiversity in the tech population, i.e. those who work in the tech ecosystem, is 2.5 times greater than in the general population. But the prevalence of neurodiversity in the prison population is 5 to 6 times what it is in the general population. And as someone
I never heard that.
Yeah. So when John told us, I was like, wow. But as someone who was on the verge of being kicked out of school at 14 and got involved with the wrong crowds and all those things, I can see how ADHD, dopamine pursuit, all of these things, if not pointed in the right direction, can be incredibly destructive, self-sabotaging, all of those things. So I think my relationship with dopamine is a complex, not a perfect one by any means, and certainly I still need to learn that lesson.
How do you manage your ADHD today?
I have to train. I have to weight train 5-6 times a week. On the days that I don't, I'm almost destined to go for like cheap versions of dopamine, whether that be like high processed foods, caffeine. I could have 7 or 8, 9 coffees out here. I'm an endless pit for caffeine, all of those things. So I think you have to try and seek out the healthy forms, and especially the long arc releases of dopamine, which you get from exercise, the best one for me. But otherwise, it's challenge. And I speak to many ADHD entrepreneurs. Our biggest fear, weekends. You know, when the downtime, oh God, that's terrifying.
But try to do that dopamine.
Exactly. But meditation, all of those things, which I have built into practice, help.
You do that, you meditate.
Yeah. I started meditating December 2016. I remember it clearly because I was going through a really difficult period where I was trying to medicate myself in many, many ways. And someone had suggested meditation to me. And it was on and off for a few years, but periods of meditating every day for 3 months and then not touching it for a while and coming back to it. And my practice has been really strong, I'd say, for the last 1.5 to 2 years, which is really important for me.
How do you do it? Once a day? Twice a day?
Once a day, once a day. Ideally, when I wake up, but more often than not, just before I go to bed. And I don't know if you do you meditate?
Yeah, I also had the on and off relationship, but then every time I am just shocked how efficient it is. I think it's actually the most efficient thing to achieve clarity and contentment and all these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I haven't been perfect with it.
Yeah, well, it's funny, like, for something which is 10 minutes a day, I don't know why it's so difficult to commit to doing every day. And it's funny, like, so many people I speak to say the same thing, which is like, it's so effective, it's so powerful. I still struggle to do it every day. And there's a great app, by the way, I don't know if you've tried the Waking Up app. It's amazing. It really deepened my practice personally. I thought it was fantastic with that, worth trying. And I think one of the biggest founder challenges is the regulation of emotions when certain situations pop up, not getting too high, not getting too low. And I think meditation has been key to helping me navigate those peaks and troughs.
Yeah. I also use it, I try to do it every day, twice a day even, but for me, it's also a perfect tool to use to make an important decision. And if I'm not sure, because every time I'm surprised that the decision becomes very clear after 20 minutes of meditation. So, which basically means that it's this noise that kind of prevents me from making the decision faster.
That's really interesting. And it makes a lot of sense because it's something I've read now, I don't know about the scientific validity of this, but it seems to be quite legitimate. But talking about the amygdala, which is the fight and flight center of the brain, and lots of studies that have been done on the brains of people who meditate show a shrunken amygdala, i.e. the ability to make decisions with less fight or flight improves with more meditation. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because talking about leadership, at the end of the day, it's all about the quality of your decisions. So if we just prioritize everything that's really impactful for the quality of our decisions, by definition, everything else becomes better. So that's my logic. And I found that meditation is the most amazing tool. Exercise is another one.
Yeah. And do you think there is without going too esoteric here, do you think there is a spiritual element to meditation helping with decision making and almost like being guided in a way? Do you ever get that feeling?
I have different explanation for it because I've also observed that it almost feels like there's a power energy coming from somewhere else through meditation that helps you. But I think that it's just a moment when we really feel connected with the rest of the universe. We almost plug in, and there must be energy flowing through, right? When we plug in. So it is esoteric in a way, but it's there, isn't it?
I certainly feel it, yeah.
I definitely think meditation has a huge spiritual meaning because it makes you stop and connect. And spirituality at the end of the day is simply connectedness with other things. And this is exactly what makes us less selfish. Right?
I love that as a explanation of spirituality, connectedness to other things. That's really nice.
But that's all it is. Because I think people confuse spirituality with mysticism and with religions. With religions, they simply attempted to wrap up this wisdom of spirituality into stories. And now we look at these stories and we don't believe them. But the wisdom is the same across religions.
Yes.
And mysticism just has nothing to do with any of that. Right?
Yes.
And pure spirituality, to me, is that connectedness. And then we connect in different ways. We connect when we are present. We connect when we meditate. Right? We connect intellectually because we understand that we are part of a bigger universe. And it always calms me down when I think, oh, I'm not alone. Right? If I feel anxiety and stress, just understand, I'm just part of something bigger. And I find that practicing it is very, very helpful in just becoming a better person. Because at the end of the day, when you know you're becoming a better person, you can't help but feel much better about yourself. And if you feel better about yourself, you feel happier and more fulfilled. And there's more meaning in life because you're growing.
Yeah.
to contribute. It's the right direction generally for our lives.
Totally. I think that's beautifully put as well. And you're right. And I also think that when you feel that connectedness with other, it's also difficult to do bad things to other people.
Of course.
You know, because you actually feel it.
Yeah.
You actually feel that pain. And I genuinely think, if anything, and I don't want to go controversial here at all, but some of the sectarianism, some of the religious conflicts that we see feel so far removed from spirituality because of spirituality, as you put it, is the connectedness of things. That conflict in many ways is just not congruent with those teachings of what are fundamentally very similar, which is treat other people well, do good by others. But this is we're probably getting on a bit of a tangent here, but I think a very valuable conversation nonetheless.
But I think generally, if the population of people who are very conscious about fitness also incorporated spiritual fitness into their practice in a very similar way, learning a little bit about it as we do about our physical fitness, and then just making a habit out of it, we would very quickly realize that we can get this dopamine or serotonin maybe, which also makes us feel very good, right? It's often ignored the neurotransmitter, which actually gives us this contentment. If we just incorporated a little bit of very nonsensical, very common sense spiritual practice like meditation or just gratitude, right? We all would have much more happiness inside.
Totally. And we talk about lessons and changes. I think a big difference between myself during RealSport is during RealSport I was mind and maybe mind and body, whereas now certainly much more mind, body, soul in that way, and not ignoring that part. And I know people will possibly listen to this and say, well, it's easy for you to say gratitude comes from these types of things, but genuinely I think it is in difficult moments, in painful moments, which we all go through, and personal difficulties and all of those things, it totally does help you come back to a place of appreciation and always remembering that you could be good to others and not be ruled by emotion that way. So yeah, I love what you said there.
So when were you diagnosed with ADHD? It's such a common topic that just pops up.
Really, you see a lot of interlinking between ADHD and entrepreneurialism.
Totally. I suspect, I don't have any statistics to support that. That's just my personal observation. But I've talked to literally hundreds of exited founders now. I think those who become successful enough to sell a company are even more likely to have ADHD. So I'm leaning towards ADHD being a superpower as long as you can learn how to manage it. School of thought. That's where I'm leaning towards, just based on that observation, that it can bring you success.
I think makes total sense, and I also think a trend that I've seen with successful founders is taking big bets. Taking big bets to push things forward in the way that you have to do to move the needle in a powerful way. And if ADHD and dopamine are linked, and we build dopamine from reward centers, i.e. the outcomes of big risks, the drive for the biggest risk, the biggest dopamine payoff, and ADHD makes sense. So I think you're totally right. I think you're totally right on that. The ADHD journey for me, I was diagnosed with dyslexia at 9 years old because I was struggling to read and write. And then I was basically failing school because I couldn't concentrate. I was distracting everyone, which I totally understand. It was, my teachers were right in that sense. And just then, I think it gets hard with the brush, right? This person's badly behaved, so then your attention with the other badly behaved kids, and then, it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I got very fortunate that my school had a really forward-thinking special education department, and at that point ADHD was seen as part of special needs. That's what it was, which is interesting to think about now. I'm sure, but I assume it's seen as part of a different bracket now. But yeah, so I was going through special education at that time, getting support in that way, and got you know, a psychiatrist as a resource from the school, all of those things, and that led to ADHD diagnosis. And that was a light bulb moment because I think so much of ADHD is frustration. I think I'm smart, but I'm getting terrible grades. I can't concentrate. I can't learn. And then you get opened up to a world of basically almost what we see now in the workplace, which is like hybrid learning, of like being able to learn in your own way and actually, well, you don't need to go to lessons and maybe you can, you know, do these things and actually read that way. And that was something I carried over to university. So I went from nearly being kicked out of school to then just scraping through to university, then getting a first class honours, you know, at uni and doing really well because you could be much more flexible with the way that you learn. So I would just never go to a lecture, but then in the 3 weeks for exams, like I would go so deep into learning and enjoyed it and pick modules that I really loved. And so I think it's I mean, a bit of a tangent, but I think my experience with ADHD points more to a failure of the traditional education system to accommodate for different styles of learning than it does speak to the negativity of ADHD. But I think my inability to fit in school, like to follow the rules in school, meant from a very young age, I was like, well, I can't be a lawyer, I can't be an accountant, I can't be a doctor. I'm not going to be able to do any of these traditional things. So it was always going to be entrepreneurialism. So I knew from early on, it's cool, I'm going to have to figure out different ways of making money.
Yeah, because you have to build your own world with your own rules that actually excite you, so you would follow them. Because you can only follow your own rules if you are that type of person. Speaking about the education system, I actually think that children who are diagnosed with ADHD should be encouraged to pursue entrepreneurial path. This is, in my observation, limited one, but still, the likeliest path to bring that person to a happier life and having control of their lives and also contributing.
Yeah, totally. And Simon Squibb, who is a good friend, talks at length about this, about the way the education system is failing kids who find it difficult to follow a traditional system. And I agree, it lends itself to entrepreneurialism very well. And I think, if anything, the bending of the rules or the reinterpretation of the rules, let's say, is a core part of entrepreneurialism, right? It's all about seeing opportunities.
But it needs to be managed, right? Because if it's not managed, then these people may end up in prison. As you educated me today, the likelihood is 5-6 times higher for that. So I think it's just such an important topic because entrepreneurs contribute so much to the society. So everything that actually helps someone to become a more successful entrepreneur, including neurodiversity, needs to be understood properly and managed by the education system. That's my opinion. I feel strongly about it. I'm a mother of 3 kids, and I think at least 2 of them have some kind of neurodiversity.
Well, this is it. And also, I'd love to meet this neurotypical person, right? Who's the ground zero for all of us to be divergent from. But yeah, you're totally right. And I also think the smartest organizations, the ones who are going to do the best over the next 10, 15, 20 years, are the ones who can create that accommodation within the workplace as well. Because if you don't create those accommodations, you're not going to harness the amazing superpowers that come with neurodiversity. And I think that is a generational trend as well. And more people want those accommodations, whether they're neurodiverse or not. So I think the companies that are going to stay the most innovative are the ones who can develop it that way.
So tell me, Roei, do you have a sense of purpose?
My long-term goal is I know that whatever I'm doing now and any success that I've had today is a vehicle to my long-term goal of helping as many people as possible. I know that I've only been given these opportunities for success to build a platform, to eventually build something that will help as many people as I can. That's the only way I can make sense of it when we live in a world where there is a lot of unjust everything, where, as much as we want to say that, anyone can get themselves from one place to another, and there's certainly a lot that can be done there. There's people, if you look at what's going on in the world today, there is so much unfair suffering. The only way that I can make sense of being given some opportunities and given a good brain, all those things, is to eventually utilize this for a much bigger purpose than myself, and it's got to be helping as many people as possible. And that is something which is the only thing that's allowed me to make peace with some of the things that have happened to me.
By contributing to helping others,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah, we talked about guilt earlier. So I guess that helps you overcome the constant guilt you feel. Am I right?
Absolutely, yeah, massively so. And if we look at like even the life of my parents, like it was a struggle. My mom's life has been brutal in terms of our parents were prisoners of war, and then all these such difficult. The most difficult upbringing. She took me to the house she grew up in Budapest, and I mean, 6 of them in box where it was difficult, and no food, and just all those such difficult things. And yeah, it's the only way that I've had success at 26. I'm clearly so fortunate, lucky, and all those things. Yes, I'd have to feel guilty if there was an eventual of yes, this has got to go back in spades on the back end. Does that make sense?
A lot.
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And I'm so happy to see that you're so young and you have this clarity. And I can't help but think that what you mentioned before, that you had the luck or whatever it is to sell your company so early, to learn what it is that did not make you happy, brought you where you're here, where you're so clear you're on this path to real purpose, much more fulfilling life, and hard work, but the kind of work that inspires you. At least this is how I see it.
Definitely, and I try to bring that in now to all of my team as well as other founders that I speak to, and sort of say, well, look, of course we're going to pursue these things and achieve these things, but it can't be all about that. Like that, we have to have purpose in outcomes for our customers, whatever it is. We have to have that because it can't just be about financial gain.
Yeah, because also you wouldn't be energized as you are, because you have so much energy. I hope it's obvious from the show, but in real life you're bursting with energy, and it has to come from a place like that, where a given place, right? Because when we release energy, it's generosity, it's giving as opposed to taking.
Well, so if you've ever met an energy vampire, which I'm sure we all have,
that's not you.
Yeah, well, you certainly know it, right? When you meet them,
you know, but it's the opposite of you. You also know when the person is giving energy.
Right.
Roei, that takes me to my last question. How do you want to be remembered?
Oh, that is a challenging question. How do you want to be remembered? Do you know what? I think the idea of being remembered is a really, really strange one. I mean, when we think about some of the most impactful people, celebrities who are so loved and all these things, there was like, 5 years after they go, and so, well, no one really remembers them, right? So I think it's interesting. I did meet my grandparents, right? I think my last grandparent passed away when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And, it just makes you realize that actually the memory of you post you is very fickle, if it exists at all. So I guess I think for me it's more about like having an impact when you're alive. What can we do to have an impact when we're alive, and like just trying positive influence on people in the present. And I guess that would be a nice way to be remembered. But also I think the idea of legacy is a complex one, right?
Not something that drives you.
Not something that drives around, but I'm also 32. Right? Maybe in X amount of years' time.
It doesn't have to drive you. That's perfectly fine. I just wanted to challenge you with a question.
Yeah.
There is no right answer.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Anastasia, you're a legend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was fun.
Yeah, was that okay for you?
Of course, no, I loved it.
Amazing.
So awesome.
Thank you.
I love the whole story with stand-up comedy because I haven't had it yet.
Okay, nice.
I have sort of collector's mind. Like I find something like this and I put it in my precious collection.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for that. And also, like, so great to talk about the spiritual side of things. I didn't know that was something, in your world. So it's one of the reasons I love podcasting, like learning about others.